Hi everyone and welcome to this 10.2 Vengeance Demon Hunter guide. I hope you all have had an amazing week, the first week here of Season 3. I definitely hope you have a better week than me because I don't know if you can hear it. I spent my whole weekend being sick and I'm still a little bit sick, but that's not gonna stop me from bringing you this guide and my opinions about, the Vengeance Demon Hunter here in 10.2. So yeah, in this video we will talk about the rotations, we'll talk about the talents, we'll talk about how to pull and how to play, and then a little bit about the Demon Hunter in general. So enough about it, let's just get right into it. So it is no secret whatsoever that Demon Hunter is in a really great spot right now. So they basically just got, not completely reworked, it's very similar to what they were before, but they did actually end up getting a new build that we'll take a look at, through the talent system. But yeah, as is kind of custom with Blizzard and doing reworks, they end up actually making the class extremely well. And this is the case with the Demon Hunter. Now, the Demon Hunter has actually been a really interesting tank for a very long time, simply because they don't really have their own kit or their own personalized playstyle. What the Demon Hunter actually was before 10.2 was basically just a jack of all trades, right? That you could do anything. You had lifesteal, but it wasn't as good as the Death Knight, and you had a high parry chance, but it wasn't as good as the Warrior's Shield Block. But you had a bunch of stuff that you had basically everything, but weren't really the masters of any of them. Now with the rework, with the more focus on the sigil gameplay, it really feels that Demon Hunter has its very own distinct, fun gameplay. Almost every sigil in play, and we have 2 of each sigil with cooldown reduction, as well as in our new talent tree that we're going to take a look at in just a few seconds here. We also have gotten more defensive values, and now also has some choices in our talent tree, making the Demon Hunter not only an incredibly tank, but also just a really fun tank to play right now. So absolutely highly recommended. But without more to say, let's take a look at the talent trees. So right here we have the talent tree that I'm personally running for this first reset. Now the biggest thing about the 10.2 rework here and the new talent tree is basically just that we have gotten a new build, that we have a new sigil build that we mostly will use throughout the whole season. It's extremely strong. We've also gotten some talents moved around a little bit, opening up for more choices between the talent trees, which is definitely something I was very much wanting from the Demon Hunter before. So now that we hear, that's great. So let's start over here with the class tree. Honestly, there isn't really much you want to change up here. Honestly, the difference between raid and Mythic Plus is that, in a raid you don't really need the Chaos Nova that much, so you can take that off and going into Pursuit maybe to get more movement speed. But else no, in the beginning here you honestly just work your way down, pick up some Shattering Resolution to getting, the healing done from your Shattering Souls, increasing that, which is incredible. You also want Shard Warplace with heal for 4% of all the fire damage you deal, which, comes back into your sigils, and as well as your Immolation Arrow, so that's all really great. Do really love the Champion of the Clave here. That full Clave gets 2 charges and also has 10 yard increased range. That is really helpful to picking up targets and picking up range and just keeping the pulling going. Now picking up something like Consume Magic is very much based on the specific dungeon that you want to do, specific if you need it for something like the mob stew or anything like that. If you don't, it's not a talent that honestly you want to put on 100% of the time, because it's only usable that one time, right? So you might as well free up that point and then go somewhere else. So as you're moving down here, you might notice that the Elision Degree has actually been moved from the Spec tree over here to the class tree. And also you don't have to compete with Flutter of the Flame, since, well, that's gone. Which personally, I actually really much like. It was a strong talent because it was, the Flutter of Flame, it was really strong. It was a great amount of health you got, it's a great amount of damage reduction, but it's purely RNG. You could get it at the perfect time and it was extremely strong, but you can also just get it at times that it didn't really feel that beneficial. So I personally like more of a active playstyle where I can choose. So loosening up illusion degree, you know, making that an easier pick, the thing to choose is, you know, that's all great in my book. And you also, you know, pick up the hunt again, because the hunt is a great single target damage dot that you put on, as well as a great defensive, since you are, you know, lifestealing a lot and you are like, you know, healing a lot from the damage that you're doing to the target. So if you do it on the right target, yeah, it's really great. But that does mean that you are gonna lose the Collective Anguish, which was the one where as soon as you press Fell Devastation, you know, another Havoc Demon Hunter would just jump in and also throw I-Beam, which it was great for damage, but overall these two other talents offer both some damage, but also defensive capabilities, since, you know, yeah, the Hunt heals and the Illusion Degree spawns up to 3 lesser soul fragments. Meaning you can, like, you know, almost instantly get a soul cleave, and then also, you know, the fractures onto it, right? The only thing right here to like really like pick out, so yeah, you go down here to get up like some more of your sigils, but that will come into play more over here. But this is the Flames of Fury is a really great talent, and what it does is, you know, not only does it increase the sigil flames damage by 70%, but also generates 2 additional fury per target hit. This is that means that, you know, Sigil Flames was before a really great way to pick up aggro and start out, like, you know, pack bite, you know, throwing off in the distance. But this is like, you know, really like almost mandatory, or like it's gonna really set you off on a really great start if you push out Flames of Sigil Flame, like at the first thing you do into a pack. You have plenty of fury, you have plenty of everything. Like, go ahead. Now there is one thing I want to like touch on, that's Darkness, since that has actually also been changed specifically for Mythic Plus. As you see, if you're reading here, right, so it gains, it's like an area effect where friendly targets and yourself have a 15% chance to avoid all damage from an attack, lasts 8 seconds. But right under that, if you're not in a range, that chance to avoid damage is increased by 100%. That makes Darkness a really great talent into like Mythic Plus, and there's a lot of, just not like, also just for your own sake, you know, there's a lot of small things you can do into a pack where you just like dodge all their attacks and everything, but you can also actually do it to help out your team a little bit, you know, since everyone else can stand at it. But just from your own personal defense side here, Darkness is a really great talent. But as I mentioned, you do have some choices here, and one of those choices is that you can actually, so I have like reduced the cooldown of Darkness by 120 seconds, bringing it down from, you know, a 5-minute cooldown to a 3-minute cooldown. But what I've seen a lot of people have been playing with is, of course, Fellplate. And the reason for that is simply because you are swimming in soul fragments. But Fury is going to be the one thing that's gonna like prevent you from casting or self-healing or doing anything, right? So Fellplate is a 12-second cooldown, but it generates 30 Fury. That is a lot of Fury just to, you know, have on 12-second cooldown. Also, it gives you like mobility, since you are like almost like jumping to the target, charging. You can use that in a great way. And also, it's just it's nice single target damage, right? So, although I think that is 100% a really great choice to pick if you want the more Fury. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the extra button bloat right there. What I like to do is actually go down here. So yeah, I did pick up the 120 second cooldown reduction on Darkness, because I think that's a really great talent. I think Darkness is a really great ability. But you can also go over here and get Demon Muscle, right? So enemies deal 8% reduced damage to you for 8 seconds after being afflicted by one of your sigils. So that means that, you know, you can keep this up for like the whole entire pack and just permanently have an 8% reduced magic damage. Now this is by itself is like fine, but if you go into specific, you know, dungeons, Throne of Tides is one of those dungeons that specifically I think is really great for this magic damage. So you do have a lot of these casters in these mobs, especially if you go up here in this area here, right? There's like a bunch of stuff here that does a lot of magic damage to you, so like reducing that is like, you know, really great. But it does depend on specifically what dungeon it is. And for the most parts, I have just been using this because it kind of just Darkness kind of like takes over either if it's magic or it's physical, right? And else there isn't really much you want to change up or pick out. One of those like, you know, great things is that we have gotten a little bit more defensive throughout our trees, and specifically Live by the Clave is a really great one. When you parry an attack or have one of your attacks parried, restore 4% of your max health and 10 fury. You as a demon hunter parry a lot, especially with demon spikes, and with your mastery and agility going up, you parry a lot of attacks. And restoring 4% of your max health might not be interesting as I'm sitting right around 1 million, but if I hop into demon form, that's like 1.5 million, right? That's a lot of health all of a sudden just to get back every like 5 seconds. It creates so demon hunter is just a little tiny bit less spiky, which is great. Now going into the class tree here, this is where our sigil build is really going to start to shine. So again, as before, you do have some options. Usually you want, of course, your frailty, because that is, your bread and butter almost. Fury Brand, because yeah, great single target damage reduction. And then, deflecting spikes, because this is what's gonna really benefit the Life by Cleave. So you buff your parry chance by 15% every time you have, demon spikes up. You go down and you pick, fractured. Here you do actually have a choice, because you could, instead of going for calcium spikes, you could actually go over here and Ascending Flames. What Ascending Flame does is, your Sigil of Flame initial damage increased by 50%, and multiple application of Sigil Flame may overlap. That is, really useful, like damage-wise. It's gonna buff you up your damage a lot, because as we go down, you'll see we have multiple charges of Sigil of Flame, and the damage is already getting buffed over here. So if you're looking to pump up your damage a little bit, if you're not feeling that hurt or threatened defensively, then I could definitely see you going over like this side over here. Now personally, instead of this, I actually like to go more defensively, and for that I choose Calcium Spikes. What that does is, after the demon spikes fall off, you get a 12 damage reduction. And then every 1 second it fades by 1%. So, it goes down from 12 all the way to 1 until, you don't have it anymore. But with demon spikes, with, you going ahead and you can have a pretty high uptime on this. And that actually just almost becomes just a what's that, like 5 to 10% damage reduction, just constantly like going off. That's great. And else you just, go as you used to before. You go down here and you buff off your frailty, so you get a little bit more defensive value out of that. As well as you pick up talents like, Multi-Flame Blood, Fallout, Burning Blood, Agonizing Flames to like buff up your immolation era. So not only do you do more damage, you move faster, you spawn lesser soul fragments, and you just generate more like, defensive value for yourself. Now, Sigil of Chains is actually a really strong sigil. So what it does is actually it forces everyone into every mob into the same spot. It's really, really great like gathering. And this could have been like a really great choice if it wasn't because we already have 2 stacks of like Sigil of Silence as well as Sigil of Misery, right? So it feels a little, it's not a bad challenger, but right now from this build, it does feel a little bit overkill in my opinion to take this. I really have a hard time figuring out when you would use this and not just get the same value of using Sigil of Silence, right? So that frees up a whole extra point. And you do have the choice of going down here. Going down is definitely a really defensive value. You end up getting Last Resort, which is your cheap death, But actually, with your tier set and all that, a lot of your defensive values are actually gonna come from your Sigil of Flame. So it makes sense, instead of going this way, that we instead go on the right side here. So if you're playing Demon Hunter from last season, you will recognize some of these talents. So this is like Fury Demise buffs up, your Fury brand. As well as, every 1 second Fury brand spreads to 1 nearby enemy. Now, if you did play last season, this was actually every second Fury brand would spread. It being 1 second means that as soon as you put that on, it's gonna start spreading away. It's actually gonna reduce the amount of times it takes to spread to every target, by half. This makes Fury brand honestly much greater, and actually it kind of nullifies the fact that we did lose a stack of it, right? We only have 1 instead of having 2 now. But it's like just it's spreading much faster, it actually makes up for it, in my opinion. Now you do actually go over here just to pick up Chains of Anger, just to buff off your sigils by 2 seconds. Going down here to Cycle of Binding, afflict an enemy with a sigil reduces the cooldown of your sigils. Now this is also one of your like bread and butters with this sigil build. It basically just means that every time you put down a sigil, it's gonna reduce the cooldown of every other sigil. This can actually be used. I've been using this with like, you know, Sigil of Misery, which is honestly right now, because I have Sigil of Silence, which is, you know, if I use both of them, it's a 16-second silence, which is bonkers. Sigil of Misery is not really that used, or it's not that, you know, beneficial, because yeah, I save it to have like a cooldown, but just throwing it on and just getting your targets afflicted by it will reduce the others by like, you know, 3 seconds. That's 6 seconds if you just dump both of your Sigil of Misery, and just, you know, make sure if you do that, just make sure you keep some CC sigil up, just, you know, in case anything happens, in case your DPSers kick the same target, that you do have something up, so you don't like, you know, stand there with your pants down. But you can definitely just throw these off. I have done that to get your sigils, you know, back on cooldown. Now, Charge Fellows should buff up your fire damage from your Immolation Aura, your Fury Bane, and your Sigil Flame. And that leads us to the key point, the big key note here, right? The talent that you need to pick, if anything else. Illuminated, Illuminated Sigils. Now Sigils have 1 additional charge, and you have 15% chance to parry attacks from enemies afflicted by your Sigil of Flame. This is your whole bread and butter, right? So you have like so many sigils, absolutely, and you remember from like all these talent trees and the tier sets, your sigils not only does damage, but also increases a lot of your defensive values. Meaning that, yeah, this is basically it. This is what the demon, like, this is like so incredibly strong. On its own, it's not. Right now we're playing, you know, without the tier set. With the tier set, this is gonna go even like, you know, crazier, right? And Demon Hunter is already in a really, really great spot. Might even be a little bit too good. We're gonna talk about that later. But just a little final note here, because you do end up with like 1 last point that you can pick. And I do actually like Dark Claw Boon. I have actually been trying to take 1 talent in the Feed the Dragon. Because, you know, what that does is it's consuming a soul fragment, reduces the cooldowns of demon spikes. But, you know, like the big problem with that is that this is a 2-note talent, so 1.25 seconds is really not that much per soul fragments. You know, what's that like? So if you use 5 soul fragments, that should be what, 1.25 seconds cooldown off, and it has 16 seconds. So you need to pump up a lot of soul fragments to like really make it work. And also, but this is also beside the point, but like demon spikes, it's not that it's not useful, it very much is, but you do get a lot of parry, you do get a lot of like other defensive values through your Immolation Aura, and especially Sigil of Flames, that it kind of makes up for that little time in between the demon spikes, as well with calcium spikes with your damage reduction, that it kind of is not really that necessary. If you are in a more like tyrannical sort of like, or like a, you know, one target kind of fight, you know, Soul Carver could be argued for, definitely. It is a little bit, I would say it's a little bit overkill again, because Elysian Degree and Soul Carver kind of just do the same thing, just that one of them is purely AoE and one of them is purely single target. So what I actually like to do is just Dark Clone Boon, because your Fell Devastation, as we're going to talk in the cooldown reductions, no, sorry, in your cooldowns, is one of your strongest defensive cooldowns. So having that, like, you know, incredible damage cooldown reduction on that is absolutely, you know, I wouldn't say mandatory, but it is extremely, extremely strong. Now I do want to like highlight one talent that I was really excited for, but kind of sad that we're not going to pick out, and that is actually the one up here. Let me just pick out Soul Barrier. Soul Barrier is a huge absorption shield, and will also consume all available soul fragments to add like further absorbent on the shield. Soul Barrier for me it hits a really great spot for the Demon Hunter, especially like previously with like some of the flaws. So one of the huge like flaws or mentalities with the Demon Hunter is basically just that you don't really have active mitigation up 100% of the time, which is actually not true anymore. This is why we don't really pick out Soul Barrier. It's kind of like a shame that it comes so late, because it's kind of like a solution to a problem that we had, that Blizzard kind of fixed with this Sigil build. But I think it's a cool talent tree, and I mean a talent pick here, and I would hope that it sees a little bit of play, maybe in later seasons, or you know, further down the line. So something I think it's a great, and I think it's something that the Demon Hunter definitely needed, like a "oh panic" button kind of way. We do have that, like, you know, with Metamorphosis and Fall Devastation, but just adding in another, I would have liked to see that a little bit more play, but definitely don't pick it. It's definitely too much overkill. You're perfectly fine with all of this right here. So with the talent trees done, how do you actually play the Demon Hunter? Like, what is its strengths, and more importantly, maybe what is its weakness? So the rework here actually made the Demon Hunter really like much stronger in what it was already strong in, and less weak in its flaws. But the Demon Hunter still has flaws, and it's not one of those, you know, tanks where you just can't die on. You can definitely die on this if you do like your mistakes and if you're not playing correctly. So let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, this tank as a strength is basically that it is made for Mythic Plus. Raiding as a Demon Hunter, a Vengeance Demon Hunter, can be kind of but playing Mythic is absolutely incredible. You can feel that this tank, it feels like it's been tailor-made for like excelling at Mythic. And of course that can be seen through sigils, its movement, and its very versatile gameplay. So sigils are kind of obvious. So here you have, you know, your sigil of silence, for example, that you can like, you know, throw both of them down and have a 16-second silence loop, which completely nullifies most casting packs, or you know, you can completely dodge entire mobs, mechanics, or anything, just you alone. And you, not only that, you have Chaos Nova, you have Sigil Misery, you have your own interrupt that also has a relatively short cooldown, so you can really keep like a close eye on like different packs, and you can solo completely like silence a whole entire pack. Not only does that mean that you will take less damage, but also your group will thank you, and you will have very high success rates if you can figure out when to best use your sigils and when to best, you know, throw absolutely everything down and just like keep everything locked up. Now, the other thing that is really beneficial for Demon Hunter in Mythic Plus is its movement. So the Demon Hunter is definitely one of the most, it's not one of the most, it is the most mobile tank of all of them, right? You can jump around, backflip, fly around, you can kite so easily and so efficiently on a Demon Hunter that it actually becomes a huge strength. Because you will, like, when you push into higher and higher keys, get to a point where you can't just face tank things, and there you really want to play the Demon Hunter because so easily just move away and kite away from the packs. It's a huge benefit. But besides this CC, one of the biggest benefits of playing the Demon Hunter in Mythic Plus is, as I mentioned, the versatile gameplay here. It's true that the jack of all trades, even though you have the sigil gameplay, you have your own, you're still very much the jack of all trades. You have an answer for everything. Like, it really doesn't feel that you are a huge disadvantage in any situation. It actually really feels like that you are probably one of the most versatile tanks, that you can deal with most mechanics in Mythic Plus, either if it's physical damage, if it's magical, if it's a dot, if it's a huge tank buster, whatever it is. The Demon Hunter just feels like it has something in its kit to deal with it. And while all of these things has been greatly improved on by the rework, the biggest flaw of the Demon Hunter is simply just that there are gaps in its defensive values and abilities. And that gap kind of extends in 10.2. I'm saying kinda because, you know, we will soon get our tier set, and that tier set will increase, you know, our uptime, very high uptime on our sigils, Sigil of Flame specifically, that will, you know, grant us parry and other defensive values if you went through over the talent trees. So you might actually end up having a tank that is actually have a very, very high time on defensive abilities, because that has been the Demon Hunter's biggest weakness for long, is the fact that compared to other tanks who have Ignore Pain, Shield Block, Shield of the Righteous, Stagger, and like, you know, Bone Shield, where you can have these things up all the time without any gaps, the Demon Hunter kind of just have gaps in between, you know, with its demon spikes and the fell devastation, all these kind of things. You might have cooldown reduction, but you still have these small gaps where you don't really have anything and you don't really want to throw anything too much into it. And that is where the Demon Hunter will, you know, die, because you can survive small gaps, but if you overextend your defensive capabilities and you can really quickly run out of, you know, defensive things to press, and if you are stuck without any meta, any, you know, demon spikes, anything, the Demon Hunter will definitely suffer. My personal opinion, out of all the tanks, I think the Demon Hunter is the one that like really makes you think a lot about your defensive abilities and when to use them, because if you are not using them incorrectly, you will die on the Demon Hunter. You don't really have anything back up to, you know, save you, because we're not playing with Last Resort anymore. Yeah, I definitely think that Demon Hunter, while being extremely strong, is also one of the tanks that requires you to play the most correctly if you want to get absolutely the most out of the Demon Hunter as, you know, you can. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about your defensive abilities and cooldowns, and talk a little bit about how to like best, you know, use them. What situation do you want to use them in? The Demon Hunter is, of course, known for its metamorphosis, where he turns into this huge demon guy, or girl, if that's your preference, and just, you know, are absolutely unkillable in that situation. Metamorphoses do have a pretty long cooldown, or up to like 3 minutes, so it does actually just becomes the Demon Hunter's wall. Like if you would like, you know, if you compare it to the Warrior or similar, you know, tanks and their big cooldown structures. You want to use this when you go into, you know, a big pool and you want to make sure that you don't die. This Metamorphosis is your big cooldown. It's the one where you like press it and you know for the next 20 seconds to 30 seconds you are fine. You are absolutely unkillable, and yeah, that is your big cooldown button. But, you know, pressing Metamorphosis is not the only way to get into Metamorphosis. You, of course, have your Fell Devastation. Now, Fell Devastation is actually an interesting ability in your toolkit, because on its own, it's honestly just a offensive ability, right? You will hop into Metamorphosis, use Barrow like this huge like fire beam breath coming out of you, do a lot of AoE damage, and that's basically it. But you know, oh, and of course you will actually have, you actually do have some defensive capability. I'm sorry, you do heal back, right? You do actually heal a bunch of the damage you've taken. But with the right talent, you will also, as soon as it's done, channeling the Fire Breath, hop into Metamorphosis and stay in that form for, I believe it's like, what is it, 5 to 7 seconds. You can use it correlation with your Metamorphosis to overall like extend the duration of it. Now that makes Fell Devastation, of course, interesting, because then you are, as the player, left off with the choice: do you want to use it as a offensive ability or a defensive ability? And sometimes you even get to use it at the same time, both having it to be defensive and offensive. In theory, you should actually just be able to just, you know, throw it out as much as you can just for the damage, but it actually does have some benefits to hold it off, you know, just to make sure that you start off. If a pack is like almost about to die, it makes sense to hold it off just so you can like use the defensive value of it going into the next pack. All of this kind of depends on what is the pack that you go into and like what matters, right? There is also situations where the end of the fight is where all the danger is. So there it makes sense to use your Fell Devastation at the end of the pull. But all of this is kind of like, you know, pull to pull and like reeling the dungeons and figuring out when the best, like when you need the different defensive. Now, the danger of playing Demon Hunter actually comes from when you're not in your Metamorphosis, because what do you do then? Because by far, this is when the Demon Hunter is at his most vulnerable, right? So you do have your demon spikes, which is like the closest to your active mitigation that you have compared to other tanks. The difference is, as I mentioned before, you can't really have 100% uptime on them, so it kind of becomes like, you know, these small gaps of windows where you don't really have any defensive, and it's up to you to make sure that you save some, and then you make sure that like you minimize that gap as much as possible. But what demon spikes will do is grant your armor, grant your agility, and also just increases your parry chance by a lot. And as we looked at the talents, parrying means that you're healing a little bit and like all of that other stuff. So all yeah, just make sure it's Demon Spikes is mostly focused on physical damage. Specifically, it's really good against basic attacks, you know, auto attacks that you can get. You can parry a lot of those, as well as like, you know, bigger hit, but it is mostly physical damage that will take. Now another like big defensive you also have is Fury Brand. On its own, it's a single target 40 damage reduction, 40%, sorry, which is equal to, you know, the Warrior Shield Wall, which is one of the best defensives in the game. 40% is really nothing to scoff at. As we looked at the talents, we do actually now have it so we can spread it, same as like last season, but now it spreads on only like, you know, every 1 second instead of every other second. That means that, you know, in a short amount of time, you can spread 40% damage reduction onto an entire pack. But it does mean, and that's like, you know, really beneficial. It's a 1 minute cooldown, meaning that you can use it relatively often, and that's great. But it does mean that you have a few seconds of going into a pack in the beginning of a pack where you don't have that spread out all the time. You need to make sure of that. You might have to use, depending on the key level you're doing, you might actually have to do throw in another cooldown. Usually I like to pair them, you know, this might be a little bit overkill, but like Fell Devastation for being in a metamorphosis while I wait for that Fury Bane to like spread on to the rest of the packs. So just be aware that it is a quite good cooldown. It's just you need to wait a few seconds for it to like really like benefit and like kick off. Of course, you have your Frailty, which is the passive where every time you hit someone with Soul Cleave or Soul Bomb, you will, you know, put a little debuff on them that makes them, you know, do less damage to you, and it will stack over time. And it's basically one of those like passive that you just, you know, have to keep going. And then besides using sigils, like CC sigils, such as Sigil of Silence and Misery, to like, you know, silence entire packs, then that's kind of like what you can do against, you know, damage, right? That's kind of your mitigation like table right there. And that defensive toolkit kind of leaves a clear picture of the demon where you are extremely vulnerable in the beginning of a pull before you kind of like has set everything up. But it's kind of has the snowball effect that as soon as you kind of are going pretty hard, and you have so many different passives and active mitigations rolling off each other and like keep going, that, you know, you are like really well equipped for like longing for like, you know, the later part of the fight. But it's where it's all like basically matters for the Demon Hunter. When I have to pull a pack, my initial thoughts are that I want to hit them off, especially if they are ranged, with a Sigil of Flame. Sigil of Flame will not only spawn small like soul fragments, but it also will like drain your fury, which, you know, makes it easy for you to like start getting your frailty off. Jumping in with a Immolation Aura, making sure that you hit every target. You can't activate it before you go in. You need to like hit them with Immolation Aura, because that is what's going to spawn another fragments. That going into a Soul Bomb almost instantaneously will give you a good amount of like stacks of frailty on the targets. Now you could also, if the targets are like, you know, if the packs are a little more on the dangerous side, I would also, you know, start with a Fell Devastation. And as soon as Fell Devastation is like, you know, in Metamorphosis, that's usually when I want to use Fury Brand if the packs is like still alive. If it's not, then I will save Fury Brand for the next pool, and then, you know, during that pack while it's like spreading out, and I use Demon Spikes and stuff like that to keep myself up, Fell Devastation should get like come off cooldown, and, you know, you can like, if you need it, use it like that. So it kind of becomes your toolkit, defensive tool, kind of becomes like twofold, right? You use Fell Devastation one pack, and then maybe Fury Pain in the next one, and then Fell Devastation the third one, and then Spec, Fury Brand, and the fourth one, or sometimes you need to mix them together. But that's kind of, again, depends on the key level you're doing. But most of all, that's what like been working for me, kind of like, you know, separating my toolkit in like 2 packs, so I always have something going and always something coming off of cooldown. Now, with that said, you know, it's also extremely important that you keep, probably more important than anything, the biggest like falter of like newer Demon Hunter mains and stuff like that is you just need to use the sigils way more than you do. Way more than you do. I need to do them more than I do. Especially when our tier set is coming and we will get even more cooldown reduction and uptime on our Sigil of Flame. You need to, like, as soon as you have them up, a Sigil up, you need to keep it going, because it's not only going to give you Fury, it's going to give you cooldown reduction on your other Sigils, it's going to give you more Soul Fragments, which is going to give you more Frailty, which is going to give you more, like, you know, healing and like all this stuff. Like, sigils is your bread and butter, and to like really make sure to get the most out of your Demon Hunter, you need to use as many sigils as often as you can. And also just remember that mobility and hitting is actually defensive on the Demon Hunter. It is so useful and it's so easy to be mobile on the Demon Hunter that if everything else fails, you definitely do have your mobility as a defensive capability. Just a final note here, I guess, is the fact that I did mention that your Metamorphosis is basically your shield wall. Actually, I mean, where that is absolutely true, the way I look at the Metamorphosis is, it's specifically in practice, in practical, in like Mythic Plus, it's my, I'm gonna pull big cooldown. And I look at, you know, my cooldowns and when I have it up, and I kind of try and plan ahead of it. Like, you know, if I see that I have it up in the next 10 seconds, you know, I might go ahead and pull 2 packs or 3 packs that I normally wouldn't do. Because, you know, I know for the fact that I can keep myself up. And that's basically the fact with the Demon Hunter, because now with all your sigils and how much you can just lock everything down, the question just becomes, can you personally survive it? If you can, and you have the sigils forward, most likely you can pull a lot bigger than the other tanks if you have meta up. So I would use meta kind of offensively in that kind of sense. Not so much in a okay, I'm gonna, like, you know, be defensive, I'm gonna, like, you know, make sure I survive. No, but like, you know, okay, I'm gonna really push myself. I'm like, might struggle a little bit here, but I'm gonna like really push myself and like use meta to get some extra counts and get some extra pass to get through faster. That's really been a success story for me. But yeah, I believe that's honestly it from now. Like, just to like recap here, Demon Hunter is got an amazing rework now. We have some choices in our talent tree. We have a new interesting build, so we don't become just every other tank, but a slightly worse version of it. The Demon Hunter is like rotation defensive wise. It's all about, you have some key defensive abilities, your Metamorphosis specifically, Fury Brand with the spreading of it and stuff like that. But Demon Hunter is more about like snowballing. It's all about like getting started, getting help from your defensive abilities to get started. But as soon as you keep rolling out your bombs and your frailty and stuff like that, you increase your own healing, you're pretty much good to go, and you can like keep going and pull really big and survive a lot of things. It's just, you need to be aware of your defensive, and you need to be very aware of the gaps in between. But yeah, besides that, I do hope you guys are really enjoying the video. I hope you learned something new, and if not, I hope you give Demon Hunter a try, because it might be the best tank right now, and even if they get nerfed, they are still so much fun to play just from its utility alone. So yeah, take care everyone, and I hope you have an incredible Season 3.